There was a brilliant scientist named Dr. Emily Johnson, who had always been fascinated by the idea of time travel. Despite the warnings of her colleagues, Dr. Johnson devoted her entire career to developing a time machine that could transport her to different eras and places. Finally, after years of hard work, Dr. Johnson succeeded in building her time machine. She eagerly stepped into the machine and set the controls for the year 1845, determined to witness the height of the Victorian era for herself. But as the machine began to hum and whir, Dr. Johnson felt an icy chill run down her spine. Suddenly, she found herself hurtling through time and space at a dizzying speed, with no control over where she was going. When the machine finally came to a stop, Dr. Johnson stepped out and found herself in a deserted alleyway. The streets were eerily quiet, and the only sound was the distant howling of a pack of wolves. As she wandered through the empty streets, Dr. Johnson realized that something was very wrong. The people she saw were dressed in old-fashioned clothing, but their faces were twisted into grotesque masks of terror. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, dressed in a long, flowing dress, with dark hair and piercing eyes. She beckoned Dr. Johnson closer, and whispered a warning in her ear. "Beware, traveler," the woman hissed. "You have stepped into a place where time is twisted and the dead walk among the living. Turn back now, before it's too late." But Dr. Johnson was determined to explore this strange new world, and she pressed on, drawn by the promise of adventure and discovery. As she walked, she began to notice strange anomalies in time. The sun seemed to move too quickly across the sky, and the shadows cast by buildings were distorted and elongated. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a group of hooded figures, huddled together in a circle. As she approached, she realized that they were performing some kind of dark ritual. Without warning, the figures turned towards her, their eyes blazing with malice. Dr. Johnson realized too late that she had stumbled into a trap. As the figures closed in on her, Dr. Johnson knew that she had made a terrible mistake. She had tampered with the fabric of time itself, and now she was paying the price. In the end, Dr. Johnson was never seen or heard from again. Some say that she was swallowed up by the forces of time, forever lost in the swirling vortex of history. Others claim that she still walks the streets of that strange, haunted world, forever searching for a way to make her way back to her own time. Years passed, and Dr. Emily Johnson's disappearance became a distant memory. But rumors continued to circulate about the strange and terrifying world that she had encountered on her fateful time-traveling journey. One day, a young physicist named Sarah Thompson stumbled upon Dr. Johnson's old laboratory, hidden away in a forgotten corner of the city. Intrigued by the strange machines and equipment that she found there, Sarah began to dig deeper into Dr. Johnson's research. With the help of Dr. Johnson's notes and blueprints, Sarah began to piece together the workings of the time machine. Despite the warnings of her colleagues, Sarah was determined to try her hand at time travel herself, and see if she could uncover the truth about Dr. Johnson's disappearance. As Sarah stepped into the machine and set the controls for 1845, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. But she was determined to press on, and see where the machine would take her. As the machine began to hum and whir, Sarah felt a sudden jolt, and then she was hurtling through time and space at an incredible speed. When the machine finally came to a stop, Sarah stepped out into a familiar-looking alleyway. But something was different this time. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and Sarah could feel a sense of danger lurking around every corner. As she walked through the deserted streets, Sarah began to notice strange anomalies in time, just like Dr. Johnson had before her. The sun seemed to move too quickly across the sky, and the shadows cast by buildings were distorted and elongated. But Sarah pressed on, determined to unravel the mysteries of this strange world. And then, suddenly, she saw her, Dr. Emily Johnson, standing in the middle of the street, her eyes wild and her hair tangled. Sarah approached her cautiously, unsure if she was real or just a figment of her imagination. But as she drew closer, she saw that Dr. Johnson was holding a strange device in her hand, one that looked like it had been ripped straight out of a science fiction novel. Without a word, Dr. Johnson handed the device to Sarah and vanished into thin air. Sarah was left standing alone in the middle of the street, holding the strange device in her hand. As she examined it more closely, Sarah realized that it was a key that could unlock the secrets of time and space, and allow her to travel freely through the ages. With a sense of excitement and trepidation, Sarah stepped back into the time machine, and set the controls for an unknown destination. She knew that she was taking a huge risk, but she was determined to discover the truth about the strange and terrifying world that Dr. Johnson had encountered. And so, Sarah Thompson set out on a journey through time and space, a journey that would take her to the very limits of human knowledge, and beyond. As Sarah hurtled through the time stream, she felt the strange energies of time and space coursing through her body. She saw strange and wonderful things as she traveled through the ages, from the dawn of humanity to the far reaches of the future. But no matter where she went, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. There was something lurking just beyond the edge of her vision, a shadowy presence that seemed to be watching her every move. As she journeyed deeper into the time stream, Sarah realized that the device that Dr. Johnson had given her was more than just a key. It was a powerful weapon, capable of destroying the very fabric of time itself. With great power came great responsibility, and Sarah knew that she had to use the device wisely if she was to prevent the destruction of time and space. And then, one day, Sarah found herself in a strange and desolate world, a world of ash and dust, where the sky was dark and the air was choked with smoke. As she explored this barren wasteland, Sarah discovered that she was not alone. There were other beings there, too, beings that had been warped and twisted by the ravages of time. But even in the midst of this bleak and terrifying landscape, Sarah refused to give up hope. She knew that with the power of the device in her hands, she could restore the balance of time and space, and put an end to the horrors that she had witnessed on her journey. With a fierce determination, Sarah raised the device, and unleashed its power on the twisted beings that surrounded her. The device hummed and crackled with energy, and a bright light filled the sky. And then, suddenly, Sarah was back in her laboratory, standing before the time machine. She looked down at the device in her hand, and realized that it was no longer a weapon, it was a key once again, a key that could unlock the mysteries of time and space, and allow her to explore the wonders of the universe. With a sense of wonder and awe, Sarah stepped back into the time machine, and set the controls for an unknown destination. She knew that she had been given a great gift, the gift of time travel, and she was determined to use it wisely, to explore the furthest reaches of the universe and unlock the secrets of the cosmos. As Sarah hurtled through the time stream once again, she felt a sense of exhilaration and wonder. The mysteries of time and space lay before her, waiting to be explored. She traveled to distant worlds and civilizations, witnessing wonders beyond her wildest imagination. She encountered beings of incredible intelligence and power, and learned the secrets of the universe from their teachings. But as she journeyed deeper into the time stream, Sarah began to realize that there was a darkness lurking within the fabric of time and space. An evil force that threatened to destroy all that she held dear. And so, armed with the knowledge and power that she had gained through her travels, Sarah set out on a quest to confront this darkness and put an end to its malevolent influence. She traveled through time and space, battling the forces of evil and defending the innocent. She witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, and saw the birth of stars and galaxies. And finally, after what felt like an eternity of travel, Sarah arrived at her destination, the heart of the darkness that threatened to consume the universe. She stood before a great and terrible being, whose power dwarfed anything she had ever encountered. But Sarah was not afraid. She knew that she had the power of time and space on her side, and she was determined to use it to put an end to this evil once and for all. With a fierce determination, Sarah unleashed the full power of the device, channeling the energy of time and space into a single, devastating blow. The darkness screamed and writhed in agony, but Sarah did not relent. And then, suddenly, it was over. The darkness was gone, and Sarah was left standing in the midst of a universe that was reborn and renewed. As she gazed out at the stars, Sarah knew that her journey through time and space was not yet over. But she was ready for whatever lay ahead, armed with the knowledge and power that she had gained through her travels. And so she stepped back into the time machine, and set the controls for an unknown destination. The mysteries of time and space lay before her, waiting to be explored. And Sarah was ready for anything that the universe had to offer. As Sarah traveled through the time stream, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. She had overcome incredible challenges and faced seemingly insurmountable foes, but she had emerged victorious. Now, there was nothing left to fear. But as she traveled deeper into the time stream, Sarah began to notice something strange. The universe seemed to be growing darker, and the stars began to flicker and fade. Something was wrong, and Sarah knew that she had to investigate. She journeyed to the edge of the universe, where she found a massive black hole that seemed to be swallowing everything in its path. The black hole was so massive that it was distorting time and space, causing entire galaxies to be ripped apart. Sarah knew that she had to act fast if she was going to save the universe from certain destruction. She began to work feverishly, using the device to manipulate time and space in ways that she never thought possible. For days on end, Sarah worked tirelessly, channeling the power of time and space to create a massive portal that would allow her to enter the black hole and stop its destructive force. Finally, the portal was complete, and Sarah stepped through it, entering the black hole's event horizon. The forces of gravity were so intense that she felt her body being stretched and compressed, but she refused to give up. With a burst of energy, Sarah unleashed the full power of the device, creating a massive explosion that sent shockwaves through the entire black hole. The darkness began to recede, and the stars once again began to shine. Sarah emerged from the black hole, battered but victorious. She knew that she had saved the universe from certain destruction, and that she had done what few others could have even imagined. And as she traveled back through the time stream, Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. The mysteries of time and space were infinite, and there were always new challenges waiting to be faced. But Sarah was ready for anything. She had the power of time and space at her fingertips, and she knew that she could face anything that the universe had to offer. With a sense of wonder and excitement, she set the controls for an unknown destination, ready to continue her journey through the infinite mysteries of the cosmos. As Sarah sat on a hill, watching the sun set over the distant mountains, she knew that her journey had come to an end. She had traveled through time and space, facing incredible challenges and discovering wonders that few could ever imagine. But now, she was ready to return home, to the familiar comforts of her own time and place. She had experienced more than most people could ever dream of, and she knew that she had been changed forever by her journey. With a sense of peace and fulfillment, Sarah activated the device and set the controls for home. As she watched the stars streak past her window, she knew that she would never forget the incredible adventures that she had experienced. But most of all, she knew that she would never forget the people that she had met along the way. The heroes and villains, the geniuses and fools, and the everyday people who had touched her heart in ways that she could never forget. As the device brought her back to her own time and place, Sarah felt a sense of gratitude and awe. She knew that she had been given a gift, the gift of exploration and discovery, and she knew that she would spend the rest of her life cherishing it. And so, as Sarah stepped out of the device and back into her own time and place, she smiled, knowing that her journey through time and space had been more than just a series of adventures. It had been a journey of discovery, of wonder, and of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. Once upon a time, there was a man who had lived for as long as the universe itself. His name was unknown, for it had been long forgotten by even him. He had witnessed the birth of galaxies, the formation of stars, and the emergence of life on countless planets. He had seen civilizations rise and fall, witnessed wars that had lasted for eons, and observed the evolution of consciousness throughout the cosmos. At first, he had been filled with wonder and awe, eagerly exploring the vastness of the universe and all its mysteries. But as the ages passed, he began to realize that his existence was an anomaly, a freak occurrence that defied all laws of nature. He saw the universe as a fleeting thing, constantly changing and evolving, while he remained eternally the same. At times, he felt like a god, able to witness the birth and death of stars, to watch the endless cycle of life and death, and to comprehend the universe's deepest secrets. But as the millennia wore on, he began to feel a sense of emptiness, a longing for something more. He watched as civilizations rose and fell, as the great empires of the universe crumbled into dust. He saw countless species go extinct, their cultures lost forever. He witnessed the rise of countless religions, each one claiming to have the answer to the universe's mysteries. But none of them satisfied him, for he knew that none of them could comprehend the true nature of his existence. He spent countless eons searching for meaning, wandering the universe in search of something that could fill the void in his heart. He visited countless planets, watched as new civilizations emerged and thrived, only to be consumed by their own greed and ambition. He saw countless wars, each one fought for petty reasons, each one claiming countless lives. But amidst all the chaos and destruction, he saw glimpses of hope, moments of kindness and compassion that shone like beacons in the darkness. He saw the birth of art and music, the emergence of philosophy and science, and the growth of a new kind of consciousness, one that transcended the boundaries of individuality and embraced the interconnectedness of all things. And slowly, he began to see that his existence was not a curse but a gift, a chance to witness the universe's unfolding and to contribute to its growth and evolution. He began to see himself not as an observer but as a participant, a being with a purpose, to bring light to the darkness, to spread hope in a universe consumed by chaos and destruction. He realized that he was not alone, that there were others like him, beings that had transcended the boundaries of time and space, and that together, they could work towards a common goal, to create a universe that was just and compassionate, where all beings could thrive and evolve. And so he set out on a new journey, a journey of hope and possibility, a journey that would take him to the farthest corners of the universe and beyond. He knew that it would not be an easy journey, that there would be challenges and obstacles along the way, but he was ready for the task, for he knew that he had all the time in the universe. And so the man who had lived for as long as the universe itself set out on a new adventure, filled with hope and possibility, ready to embrace whatever the universe had in store for him. He traveled for eons, exploring new worlds, meeting new beings, and learning new things. He found himself drawn to those who shared his desire for a better universe, those who had dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge, the betterment of their civilizations, and the protection of their planets and their inhabitants. He joined forces with them, working together to create a better future, one that was just and compassionate, where all beings were valued and respected. They created great institutions of learning, where knowledge was shared freely, and where the mysteries of the universe were explored and understood. They worked tirelessly to protect the universe from those who sought to exploit it for their own selfish ends, those who would use their power to oppress and destroy. They fought against tyrants and conquerors, standing up for the oppressed and the powerless, and ensuring that justice prevailed. As the eons passed, they continued their work, always striving for a better future, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And as they worked, they came to realize that they were not alone, that there were others like them scattered throughout the universe, each one working towards the same goal. They began to work together, forging alliances and partnerships, pooling their resources and their knowledge, and creating a network of like-minded individuals that span the entire universe. And with each new discovery, each new advancement, they moved closer to their goal, creating a universe that was truly worthy of their existence. And so the man who had lived for as long as the universe itself continued on his journey, working tirelessly towards the goal of creating a better universe. He knew that his journey would never truly be over, for the universe was constantly changing, constantly evolving, and there would always be new challenges to face and new frontiers to explore. But he was content, for he knew that he was making a difference, that his existence had meaning, and that he was a part of something greater than himself. And so he continued on his journey, a journey that would last for as long as the universe itself. He traveled for eons, exploring new worlds, meeting new beings, and learning new things. He found himself drawn to those who shared his desire for a better universe, those who had dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge, the betterment of their civilizations, and the protection of their planets and their inhabitants. He joined forces with them, working together to create a better future, one that was just and compassionate, where all beings were valued and respected. They created great institutions of learning, where knowledge was shared freely, and where the mysteries of the universe were explored and understood. They worked tirelessly to protect the universe from those who sought to exploit it for their own selfish ends, those who would use their power to oppress and destroy. They fought against tyrants and conquerors, standing up for the oppressed and the powerless, and ensuring that justice prevailed. As the eons passed, they continued their work, always striving for a better future, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And as they worked, they came to realize that they were not alone, that there were others like them scattered throughout the universe, each one working towards the same goal. They began to work together, forging alliances and partnerships, pooling their resources and their knowledge, and creating a network of like-minded individuals that span the entire universe. And with each new discovery, each new advancement, they moved closer to their goal, creating a universe that was truly worthy of their existence. And so the man who had lived for as long as the universe itself continued on his journey, working tirelessly towards the goal of creating a better universe. He knew that his journey would never truly be over, for the universe was constantly changing, constantly evolving, and there would always be new challenges to face and new frontiers to explore. But he was content, for he knew that he was making a difference, that his existence had meaning, and that he was a part of something greater than himself. And so he continued on his journey, a journey that would last for as long as the universe itself. As the man journeyed through the universe, he encountered many challenges and setbacks. There were times when it seemed like his vision of a better universe was nothing more than a pipe dream, and he felt discouraged and alone. But he refused to give up. He knew that creating a better universe was not something that could be achieved overnight. It required patience, persistence, and a willingness to overcome obstacles and setbacks. And so he continued on his journey, his spirit unbroken, his resolve stronger than ever. He formed new alliances and partnerships, and he continued to learn and grow, always seeking new knowledge and insights that could help him achieve his goal. As he journeyed, he began to see the impact of his work. He saw civilizations that he had helped to build flourishing, and he saw beings that he had helped to save living happy and fulfilling lives. And with each passing moment, he knew that he was getting closer to achieving his goal, to creating a universe that was truly just and compassionate. But he also knew that his work would never truly be done. The universe was constantly evolving, and there would always be new challenges and obstacles to overcome. But he was ready for whatever lay ahead, for he knew that he was not alone, that there were others like him who shared his vision and his purpose. And so he continued on his journey, his spirit buoyed by the knowledge that he was making a difference, that his existence had meaning, and that he was a part of something greater than himself. And as he journeyed, he knew that the universe would continue to evolve and grow, becoming a better place for all beings, a place where compassion and kindness reigned supreme, and where all beings were valued and respected. And he knew that as long as there were beings like him, beings who believed in the power of compassion and kindness, the universe would continue to thrive and flourish for eons to come. As the man continued his journey through the universe, he encountered many new civilizations and beings. Some were friendly, while others were hostile. But he approached each encounter with an open mind and an open heart, always seeking to understand and learn from those around him. He also encountered new challenges and obstacles, some of which tested his resolve and his purpose. But he remained steadfast in his commitment to creating a better universe, and he continued to seek out new ways to overcome these challenges. Along the way, he also encountered other immortal beings like himself, each with their own unique perspective on the universe and its purpose. They shared their knowledge and experiences with one another, and together they worked towards a common goal. And as they journeyed together, they began to see the impact of their work. They saw civilizations that had once been torn apart by war and conflict now living in peace and harmony. They saw beings who had once been oppressed and marginalized now living with dignity and respect. And with each passing moment, they knew that they were making a difference, that their existence had meaning, and that they were a part of something greater than themselves. As they journeyed through the universe, they also encountered new forms of life that they had never seen before. They discovered new worlds, new galaxies, and new dimensions, each with their own unique wonders and mysteries. And with each new discovery, they were reminded of the vastness and complexity of the universe, and of the infinite potential that lay within it. And so they continued on their journey, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they were making a difference, that they were helping to create a universe that was truly just and compassionate, and that their work would continue for eons to come. For even as the universe continued to evolve and change, they knew that their purpose would remain the same, to help create a universe where all beings were valued and respected, where compassion and kindness reigned supreme, and where harmony and balance prevailed. And so the man who had lived since the beginning of the universe continued his journey, alongside his fellow immortal beings, always striving to create a better universe for all beings. Their work would continue for countless eons, for the universe was an endless sea of possibilities and potential. But they were ready for whatever lay ahead, for they knew that as long as there were beings who believed in the power of compassion and kindness, the universe would continue to thrive and flourish. And as they journeyed on, they knew that they were a part of something greater than themselves, a part of a never-ending quest to create a universe that was truly just, compassionate, and equitable for all. Their story would continue on, in the hearts and minds of all those who believed in their cause, and in the actions of those who sought to bring their vision to life. For the man who had lived since the beginning of the universe, his journey had been a long and arduous one, but it was a journey that had been worth it in the end. For he had helped to create a universe that was truly worthy of all its inhabitants, a universe that was filled with beauty, wonder, and limitless potential. And as he looked out into the vast expanse of space, he knew that his work would continue on, for eons to come, inspiring generations of beings to come. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Olivia who found herself stuck in a strange time loop. Every time she died, the loop would reset, and she would find herself back at the beginning of the day. At first, Olivia didn't realize what was happening. She thought she was just experiencing déjà vu or having a strange dream. But as the day continued to repeat itself, Olivia began to understand the reality of her situation. No matter what she did or where she went, the loop would always reset at the moment of her death. It was a frustrating and disorienting experience, and Olivia felt trapped and alone. She tried everything she could think of to break the cycle. She tried avoiding danger, staying indoors, and even leaving town altogether. But no matter what she did, the loop continued, and she was always forced to relive the same day over and over again. As time went on, Olivia began to lose hope. She felt like she was living in a nightmare, and she didn't know how to escape. But then one day, something unexpected happened. As Olivia was walking through town, she saw a man who looked vaguely familiar. She didn't know why, but she felt drawn to him, and she followed him to a small coffee shop. There, they struck up a conversation, and Olivia felt a connection she hadn't felt in a long time. The man's name was Max, and he listened intently as Olivia explained her predicament. To her surprise, Max didn't dismiss her story as crazy or impossible. Instead, he offered to help her find a way out of the time loop. Together, Olivia and Max began to investigate the cause of her strange predicament. They talked to scientists and researchers, searched ancient texts and myths, and tried every spell and ritual they could find. Finally, after months of searching, they discovered a way to break the time loop. It involved a risky and dangerous plan, but Olivia was willing to try anything to escape her never-ending nightmare. With Max by her side, Olivia faced her greatest fear and finally broke free of the time loop. She woke up in a new day, with a renewed sense of hope and a newfound appreciation for the preciousness of time. From that day forward, Olivia lived every moment to the fullest, grateful for the chance to experience life without the weight of the time loop hanging over her. And even though she couldn't forget the trauma of her past, she knew that she had the strength and resilience to face any challenge that came her way. As Olivia moved on with her life, she and Max remained close. They developed a deep and meaningful relationship, rooted in their shared experience of breaking free from the time loop. Together, they went on many adventures, explored new places, and met interesting people. Olivia felt like she was finally living the life she had always wanted, free from the confines of the time loop. But despite her newfound freedom, Olivia never forgot the lessons she had learned during her time in the loop. She knew that life was fragile and fleeting, and that every moment was precious. She made a conscious effort to live in the present, to appreciate the people and experiences that came her way, and to never take a single day for granted. And whenever she faced a difficult or challenging situation, she drew strength from the knowledge that she had survived something even more terrifying. Years passed, and Olivia grew older, but she never lost her sense of wonder and gratitude for the world around her. She remained connected to Max, and together they faced the ups and downs of life with grace and courage. And even as Olivia approached the end of her own journey, she knew that her time in the time loop had been a gift in disguise. It had taught her the value of time, the power of resilience, and the importance of living life to the fullest. And for that, she would always be grateful. In her final moments, as Olivia lay on her deathbed, surrounded by loved ones, she closed her eyes and smiled. She was at peace, knowing that she had lived a full and meaningful life. And as she took her last breath, something strange happened. Olivia felt a jolt, as if she were being pulled back in time. Suddenly, she found herself standing in the middle of the street, watching as a car hurtled towards her. For a moment, she panicked, thinking that she was trapped in the time loop again. But then she realized that this was different. This was a chance to do things differently, to make a different choice, to live a different life. With a newfound sense of purpose, Olivia stepped out of the way of the oncoming car and watched as it sped past her. She felt a rush of adrenaline and excitement, knowing that she had been given a second chance. And as she looked around at the world around her, she felt a sense of familiarity. She realized that she was in a different time, a different place, but that she still carried with her the lessons she had learned during her time in the time loop. With a smile on her face, Olivia set out on a new adventure, determined to make the most of this precious gift of time. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them with courage and grace, knowing that she had been given a second chance at life. As Olivia embarked on her new journey, she marveled at the world around her. Everything seemed so different, yet so familiar at the same time. She saw new colors, heard new sounds, and felt a new sense of wonder and curiosity. She set out to explore this new world, eager to discover all the secrets it held. She met new people, made new friends, and had adventures she never could have imagined. But despite all the excitement and novelty, Olivia never forgot the lessons she had learned in her previous life. She lived each day to the fullest, never taking a single moment for granted. She loved deeply, laughed freely, and pursued her passions with a fierce determination. And through it all, she remained grateful for the second chance she had been given. As the years passed, Olivia grew old, but she never lost her sense of wonder and joy. She lived a long and fulfilling life, surrounded by loved ones and filled with the memories of a life well lived. And when it was finally time for her to leave this world, she did so with a sense of peace and contentment. She knew that she had lived a life of purpose and meaning, and that her time in the time loop had prepared her for this moment. As she closed her eyes for the last time, Olivia felt a sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. She knew that she had been given a gift, a second chance at life, and that she had made the most of it. And as she drifted off into the unknown, she smiled, knowing that whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it with courage and grace, just as she had done before. As Olivia's consciousness drifted into the unknown, she suddenly felt a familiar jolt. It was the same sensation she had experienced many times before, the feeling of being pulled back in time. But this time was different. Olivia was no longer stuck in a time loop, but instead, she found herself in a different place altogether. She was in a bright and airy room, surrounded by people she didn't recognize. As her senses began to focus, she realized that she was in a hospital room, and the people around her were doctors and nurses. Confused and disoriented, Olivia struggled to make sense of what was happening. And then she heard a voice. It was Max, her old friend from the time loop, but he looked different now. He was older, with gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes. "Olivia, can you hear me?" Max said, his voice full of concern. Olivia struggled to respond, feeling weak and disoriented. She looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening. "You've been in a coma for a long time, Olivia," Max explained. "But you're awake now, and you're going to be okay." Olivia felt a wave of relief wash over her, as she realized that she had been given yet another chance at life. But this time, it was different. This time, she was in the real world, not trapped in a time loop. As she began to recover and rebuild her strength, Olivia knew that she had been given a precious gift. She had been given a chance to start over, to live a new life, and to make the most of every moment. And as she looked around at the people who cared for her, who had stayed by her side all these years, she felt a sense of gratitude and love. She knew that no matter what lay ahead, she would face it with the same courage and grace she had shown in the time loop. For Olivia, the journey was far from over. But she knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead, and that she would face it with open eyes and an open heart, just as she had always done. With each passing day, Olivia grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. She spent her days in the hospital, receiving treatment and undergoing physical therapy, but her mind was always active, thinking about the future and all the possibilities it held. As she regained her strength, Olivia began to explore her new world, eager to discover all the wonders it held. She visited new places, met new people, and pursued her passions with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. But even as she moved forward, Olivia never forgot the lessons she had learned in the time loop. She cherished each moment, knowing that it could be her last. She loved deeply, forgave freely, and lived with a sense of gratitude for the gift of life. Over time, Olivia became known for her kindness and generosity, and people were drawn to her warm and caring nature. She spent her days volunteering at the hospital, visiting patients and offering words of comfort and encouragement. And as she helped others, Olivia felt a sense of joy and fulfillment that she had never known before. She knew that she had been given a second chance at life, and she was determined to make the most of it, not just for herself, but for others as well. As the years passed, Olivia grew older, but she remained active and engaged, always looking for ways to give back to the world. And when she finally passed away, surrounded by loved ones, she did so with a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that she had lived a life of purpose and meaning. And in the end, Olivia realized that the time loop had been a gift, a way of preparing her for the challenges and joys of the real world. It had taught her to appreciate each moment, to love deeply, and to never give up hope. For Olivia, the journey had been long and difficult, but in the end, it had been worth it. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had made the most of it, leaving behind a legacy of kindness and compassion that would endure for generations to come. With each passing day, Olivia grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. She spent her days in the hospital, receiving treatment and undergoing physical therapy, but her mind was always active, thinking about the future and all the possibilities it held. As she regained her strength, Olivia began to explore her new world, eager to discover all the wonders it held. She visited new places, met new people, and pursued her passions with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. But even as she moved forward, Olivia never forgot the lessons she had learned in the time loop. She cherished each moment, knowing that it could be her last. She loved deeply, forgave freely, and lived with a sense of gratitude for the gift of life. Over time, Olivia became known for her kindness and generosity, and people were drawn to her warm and caring nature. She spent her days volunteering at the hospital, visiting patients and offering words of comfort and encouragement. And as she helped others, Olivia felt a sense of joy and fulfillment that she had never known before. She knew that she had been given a second chance at life, and she was determined to make the most of it, not just for herself, but for others as well. As the years passed, Olivia grew older, but she remained active and engaged, always looking for ways to give back to the world. And when she finally passed away, surrounded by loved ones, she did so with a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that she had lived a life of purpose and meaning. And in the end, Olivia realized that the time loop had been a gift, a way of preparing her for the challenges and joys of the real world. It had taught her to appreciate each moment, to love deeply, and to never give up hope. For Olivia, the journey had been long and difficult, but in the end, it had been worth it. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had made the most of it, leaving behind a legacy of kindness and compassion that would endure for generations to come. It was a dark and stormy night when Sarah, a young woman in her early 20s, arrived at the old Victorian house that she had inherited from her grandmother. She had never been to the house before and was apprehensive about what she might find inside. As she stepped inside, the musty smell of age and decay hit her nostrils, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to shake off the feeling and told herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. As Sarah explored the house, she discovered that it was full of old furniture, dusty curtains, and cobwebs. It seemed like the house had been abandoned for years. As she made her way up to the second floor, she heard a creaking sound coming from the stairs behind her. She turned around but saw nothing. As she continued her exploration, she heard more strange noises, footsteps, whispers, and doors opening and closing by themselves. Sarah tried to tell herself that it was just the wind or some other harmless explanation, but the fear inside her grew with every passing moment. As the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more ominous. Sarah felt like she was being watched, and she knew that she was not alone in the house. She tried to leave, but the front door was stuck shut. She was trapped. Finally, she heard a voice whispering her name. She turned around and saw a figure standing in the shadows. She couldn't make out who or what it was, but she knew that it was not human. Sarah screamed and tried to run, but the figure was too fast. It grabbed her and pulled her into the darkness. Sarah's screams echoed through the old house, but no one came to her rescue. The next morning, Sarah's body was found in the attic, her eyes wide open in terror. No one knows what happened to Sarah that night, but some say that her grandmother's house is cursed, and that whoever enters it is doomed to meet a terrible fate. The old Victorian house still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horror that lurks within its walls. It was a dark and stormy night when Sarah, a young woman in her early 20s, arrived at the old Victorian house that she had inherited from her grandmother. She had never been to the house before and was apprehensive about what she might find inside. As she stepped inside, the musty smell of age and decay hit her nostrils, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to shake off the feeling and told herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. As Sarah explored the house, she discovered that it was full of old furniture, dusty curtains, and cobwebs. It seemed like the house had been abandoned for years. As she made her way up to the second floor, she heard a creaking sound coming from the stairs behind her. She turned around but saw nothing. As she continued her exploration, she heard more strange noises, footsteps, whispers, and doors opening and closing by themselves. Sarah tried to tell herself that it was just the wind or some other harmless explanation, but the fear inside her grew with every passing moment. As the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more ominous. Sarah felt like she was being watched, and she knew that she was not alone in the house. She tried to leave, but the front door was stuck shut. She was trapped. Finally, she heard a voice whispering her name. She turned around and saw a figure standing in the shadows. She couldn't make out who or what it was, but she knew that it was not human. Sarah screamed and tried to run, but the figure was too fast. It grabbed her and pulled her into the darkness. Sarah's screams echoed through the old house, but no one came to her rescue. The next morning, Sarah's body was found in the attic, her eyes wide open in terror. No one knows what happened to Sarah that night, but some say that her grandmother's house is cursed, and that whoever enters it is doomed to meet a terrible fate. The old Victorian house still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horror that lurks within its walls. Years passed, and the old Victorian house remained untouched, a constant reminder of the horrors that happened within its walls. But one day, a young couple moved into the town and decided to purchase the old house. They were fascinated by its history and were not superstitious about the rumors that circulated around it. They thought that the stories were just made up to scare people away and decided to make the old house their new home. As they began to renovate the house, strange things started to happen. They would hear noises in the night, doors would slam shut, and objects would move on their own. But they brushed it off as just the old house settling. One night, the couple was awoken by the sound of laughter coming from the attic. They thought it was just kids playing a prank, so they went to investigate. But as they climbed the stairs to the attic, the laughter turned into a blood-curdling scream. When they reached the attic, they saw the same figure that had haunted Sarah and the teenagers before them. Its eyes were red, and its skin was pale and cold. It started to laugh, a chilling sound that echoed through the attic. The couple tried to run, but the figure was too fast. It was like it knew the house inside out and was guiding them towards a trap. They soon found themselves trapped in the basement, with no way out. The figure appeared in front of them, and they closed their eyes, waiting for the worst. But then, everything went silent. When they opened their eyes, the figure was gone. They looked around, but they were alone in the basement. The couple never spoke about what happened that night, but they knew that they had come face to face with the horror that lurked in the old Victorian house. They realized that the rumors were true, and that the house was cursed. They quickly packed their bags and left the house, never looking back. The old Victorian house still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horror that lies within its walls. It is a place of fear and terror, and no one knows what evil resides there. But some say that on quiet nights, you can still hear the laughter of the figure that haunts the old Victorian house, reminding everyone of the horror that lies within its walls. Over time, the old Victorian house became known as a cursed landmark. People in the town would avoid it, and parents would use it as a warning to keep their children from wandering too far from home. The couple who had briefly lived there never spoke of their experience, and the house remained empty for years. But one day, a group of urban explorers decided to break into the old Victorian house to see what secrets it held. They were intrigued by the rumors of hauntings and the strange occurrences that had been reported in the past. As they explored the house, they felt an eerie presence. The old house seemed to come alive, with creaks and groans echoing through the halls. But they pressed on, driven by their curiosity. They made their way to the attic, where they heard a faint whispering. As they approached, the whispering grew louder, and they could make out the sound of a woman's voice. They thought it might be a recording, but when they looked around, they saw no signs of any audio equipment. Suddenly, the whispering stopped, and the room grew cold. The door slammed shut, trapping them in the attic. They tried to open the door, but it was locked from the outside. As they searched for a way out, they saw the figure in the shadows. Its eyes were red, and its skin was pale and cold. It started to laugh, a chilling sound that echoed through the attic. The explorers were terrified, and they knew that they were not going to make it out alive. The figure approached them, and they closed their eyes, waiting for the worst. But then, everything went silent. When they opened their eyes, the figure was gone. The door to the attic was unlocked, and they ran out of the house, never looking back. The urban explorers never spoke of what happened that night, but they knew that they had come face to face with the horror that lurked in the old Victorian house. They warned others to stay away, but some were still drawn to the mystery and darkness that surrounded the cursed landmark. The old Victorian house still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horror that lies within its walls. It is a place of fear and terror, and no one knows what evil resides there. But some say that the figure still haunts the house, waiting for its next victim to cross its path. Years passed, and the old Victorian house remained abandoned, but the legend of the figure that haunted its halls continued to grow. People in the town would avoid it at all costs, and many believed that the house was cursed, that no one who entered would come out alive. But one day, a group of paranormal investigators arrived in the town. They were intrigued by the stories of hauntings and were determined to uncover the truth behind the old Victorian house. They set up their equipment and began their investigation. As they explored the house, they heard strange noises and felt an eerie presence. But they pressed on, driven by their curiosity. They made their way to the attic, where they set up their cameras and began to ask questions. Suddenly, the cameras went dark, and the room grew cold. The investigators heard a faint whispering, and then the figure appeared in front of them. Its eyes were red, and its skin was pale and cold. It started to laugh, a chilling sound that echoed through the attic. The investigators were terrified, but they didn't run. They knew that this was their chance to uncover the truth behind the legend. They asked the figure questions, hoping to get some answers. To their surprise, the figure began to speak. It told them of the tragedy that had occurred in the old Victorian house years ago, of the woman who had been brutally murdered and the spirit that had been trapped there ever since. The investigators listened intently, hoping to learn more. As the figure finished its story, it disappeared into the shadows. The cameras flickered back to life, and the room warmed up. The investigators knew that they had witnessed something incredible, something that would change their lives forever. They left the old Victorian house with a newfound respect for the paranormal and a deeper understanding of the world beyond our own. They knew that the legend of the figure that haunted the house would continue, but now they had the truth, and that was all that mattered. The old Victorian house still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horror that lies within its walls. But for those who dare to enter, there is a chance to uncover the truth and learn the secrets of the figure that haunts its halls. The paranormal investigators were fascinated by the story they had uncovered in the old Victorian house. They knew that they had to share it with the world, to let people know the truth about the cursed landmark. They started to investigate other haunted places, hoping to uncover more stories like the one they had found in the old Victorian house. They traveled to different parts of the world, visiting haunted castles, abandoned hospitals, and other places where paranormal activity had been reported. Over time, they became well known in the paranormal community, and their work was respected by many. They published books, made documentaries, and even had their own TV show. But they never forgot the old Victorian house, and the figure that had haunted its halls. They returned to the house many times, hoping to learn more about the spirit that had been trapped there. One day, they received a letter from a woman who claimed to be a descendant of the woman who had been murdered in the old Victorian house. She said that she had information that could help them uncover more about the spirit that haunted the house. The investigators met with the woman, and she told them the story of her ancestor, of how she had been wrongly accused of a crime she did not commit and had been killed for it. She also told them that there was a way to break the curse that had been placed on the old Victorian house. The investigators were skeptical but intrigued. They returned to the old Victorian house, armed with the information they had received. They performed a ritual to break the curse, hoping that it would work. As they performed the ritual, they felt a presence in the room. But this time, it was different. It was warm and welcoming, and they knew that the curse had been broken. They heard the sound of a woman's voice, thanking them for setting her free. The investigators left the old Victorian house, feeling a sense of relief and satisfaction. They knew that they had done something good, that they had helped to release a spirit that had been trapped for far too long. The old Victorian house still stands, but it is no longer cursed. People in the town no longer fear it, and some even say that they feel a sense of peace when they pass by. The legend of the figure that haunted its halls has faded into memory, but the truth behind the story lives on, thanks to the work of the paranormal investigators who were brave enough to uncover it. And so, the story of the old Victorian house and the figure that haunted its halls came to an end. But the legacy of the paranormal investigators who uncovered the truth lived on. They continued to explore haunted places, always searching for answers and seeking to help those who were trapped in the world beyond our own. Their work was never done, but they knew that they had made a difference, that they had shed light on the mysteries of the paranormal and helped to dispel the fear and superstition that surrounded it. As for the old Victorian house, it remained a landmark in the town, a testament to the tragedy that had occurred there and the spirit that had been trapped for so long. But now, it was also a symbol of hope and redemption, a reminder that even the darkest curses can be broken if we have the courage to face them. And so, the old Victorian house stood, a silent witness to the mysteries of the world beyond our own, and a beacon of hope for those who dared to seek the truth. In 1996, a small town in rural Tennessee was rocked by a gruesome crime that would shake the community to its core. It all started when a local farmer, named John, reported his wife missing. The couple had been married for over 30 years and lived on a large farm just outside of town. Police launched an immediate search, but their efforts were in vain. After a week of searching, they received a tip from a neighbor who had noticed strange activity on the farm. The neighbor reported that John had been acting suspiciously and that there was a foul odor coming from the couple's barn. When police arrived at the farm, they found John standing in front of the barn. He appeared nervous and agitated. The officers noticed blood on his clothes and quickly searched the barn. What they found was a scene straight out of a horror movie. In the barn, police discovered the mutilated body of John's wife. She had been brutally murdered and dismembered. Her body parts were scattered throughout the barn, and evidence suggested that she had been dead for several days. John was immediately taken into custody, and during questioning, he confessed to the murder. He told police that he and his wife had been having marital problems for some time, and that he had snapped in a fit of rage. John's trial was a media circus, with reporters from all over the country descending on the small town to cover the story. Despite his confession, John pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense team argued that he had a history of mental illness, and that he was not responsible for his actions at the time of the murder. In the end, the jury found John guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The small town never fully recovered from the shock of the crime, and the case remains one of the most notorious in Tennessee's history. As the years passed, new details emerged about the case that only added to its intrigue. Some reports suggested that John's mental state may have been exacerbated by his heavy drinking and drug use. Others speculated that he may have been motivated by financial gain, as his wife had recently inherited a large sum of money. But perhaps the most disturbing detail to emerge was that John had not acted alone. During his trial, evidence came to light that suggested that he had an accomplice, a farmhand named James, who had helped him dispose of his wife's body. James was arrested and charged with accessory to murder, but he maintained his innocence, insisting that he had only helped John move some heavy objects and had no idea that a murder had taken place. Despite James' protestations, he was found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison. In the years since his conviction, there have been persistent rumors that he may have been more involved in the murder than he let on, but no new evidence has ever come to light. Meanwhile, John remains in prison, having exhausted all of his appeals. He has never shown any remorse for his actions and has refused to speak to the media or participate in any interviews. The murder of John's wife continues to haunt the small town where it took place, with many residents still unable to come to terms with the fact that such a gruesome crime could happen in their midst. But for the families of the victims, the pain and trauma of the event will never fully go away. Over the years, the case has also garnered attention from amateur sleuths and online communities who have attempted to piece together the details of the crime and speculate on its possible motives. One theory that has gained traction is that John may have been involved in a love triangle with his wife and another woman. Some have suggested that this could have been a possible motive for the murder, but there is no concrete evidence to support this theory. Another theory is that the murder was a premeditated act, rather than a sudden burst of rage. Some have pointed to John's history of violence and his erratic behavior in the months leading up to the crime as evidence of this. Despite the many theories and speculations, the truth behind the murder of John's wife may never be fully known. The case remains a cautionary tale of the destructive power of anger and the terrible consequences that can arise from a moment of rage. For the small town where it took place, the murder of John's wife will always be a dark chapter in its history, a reminder that even the most seemingly peaceful and idyllic places can be home to terrible and unspeakable crimes. In the aftermath of the crime, the small town underwent a period of collective mourning and soul-searching. Residents grappled with the question of how such a heinous act could have happened in their community and what steps could be taken to prevent similar tragedies in the future. As a result, the town established a community task force to address issues of domestic violence and mental health. The task force has since implemented a range of initiatives, including public education campaigns, outreach to at-risk populations, and the establishment of a local crisis center to provide support and counseling to victims of domestic abuse. While nothing can undo the terrible tragedy that occurred, the town's efforts have helped to create a more supportive and caring community, one that is better equipped to recognize the warning signs of domestic violence and intervene before it is too late. For the families of the victims, the road to healing has been long and difficult. They have had to grapple with the shock and trauma of losing a loved one in such a violent and senseless way, as well as the additional pain of having their grief played out in the public eye. But through it all, they have shown a remarkable resilience and strength, finding solace in the support of their community and the knowledge that their loved ones will never be forgotten. The murder of John's wife remains a cautionary tale, a reminder of the terrible things that can happen when anger and violence are allowed to go unchecked. But it is also a story of hope and resilience, of a community that has come together in the face of tragedy to build a brighter and more compassionate future. In the years since the murder, John's wife has become a symbol of the victims of domestic violence, with her story serving as a powerful reminder of the need to take this issue seriously and to work towards ending it. Her tragic death has inspired others to speak out about their own experiences with abuse and has helped to raise awareness of the warning signs of domestic violence. The case has also been studied by criminologists and psychologists as an example of the complex factors that can lead to violent behavior. The investigation and subsequent trial highlighted the role that substance abuse, mental illness, and other factors can play in triggering violent behavior. For John, the murder of his wife has led to a life behind bars, with little hope of ever being released. While he has never shown any remorse for his actions, he has become a cautionary tale for others, a stark reminder of the terrible consequences that can arise from a moment of rage. The murder of John's wife will always be a tragedy, one that has left an indelible mark on the small town where it occurred and on the lives of those who knew and loved the victim. But it has also sparked important conversations about the need to address the root causes of domestic violence and to work towards creating a safer and more just society for everyone. The case has also had a lasting impact on the criminal justice system. The investigation and subsequent trial revealed gaps in the system's ability to protect victims of domestic violence, particularly those who may be at heightened risk due to the actions of their abusers. As a result of the case, many jurisdictions have implemented new measures to better protect victims of domestic violence, such as expanded restraining order laws, mandatory arrest policies in cases of domestic violence, and increased funding for victim support services. The case has also highlighted the importance of police training in recognizing and responding to cases of domestic violence. Officers are now being trained to identify the warning signs of domestic violence and to approach these cases with sensitivity and understanding. The murder of John's wife may have been a tragic and senseless act, but it has also served as a catalyst for positive change. Through the efforts of the community and the criminal justice system, her legacy lives on, as a reminder of the need to work towards creating a society where domestic violence is not tolerated and victims are protected and supported. As time has passed, the murder of John's wife has also become the subject of books, documentaries, and true crime podcasts. The case continues to captivate the public imagination, with people all over the world fascinated by the mystery of what really happened that fateful night. Some have even speculated that John's wife's spirit still haunts the small town where she was killed, with reports of ghostly apparitions and strange occurrences in the area. While the case may never be fully solved, it remains an important reminder of the need to take domestic violence seriously and to work towards creating a safer and more just society for all. The murder of John's wife was a tragedy that shook a small town to its core. But through the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged, as the community came together to support the victims, address the root causes of domestic violence, and work towards creating a brighter and more compassionate future. For the families of the victims, the memories of their loved ones live on, as they continue to honor their legacies and share their stories with others. Many have turned their grief into action, becoming advocates for victims of domestic violence and working to raise awareness of the issue. They have created foundations, organized events, and shared their stories with the hope of preventing similar tragedies from happening in the future. The murder of John's wife will always be a painful chapter in the history of the small town where it occurred. But it has also shown the power of a community to come together in the face of tragedy and to create positive change. As the years go by, the town continues to heal, but the memory of the victims and the lessons learned from their tragic deaths will never be forgotten. Their story serves as a reminder of the need to address the root causes of domestic violence and to work towards creating a safer and more just world for all. In the aftermath of the case, many people have also been inspired to seek help and support for themselves or for loved ones who may be experiencing domestic violence. Hotlines and support groups have reported increased calls and requests for assistance, as people feel more empowered to speak out about their experiences and seek help. The case has also led to important changes in the way that law enforcement and the legal system approach cases of domestic violence. Prosecutors and judges are now more likely to take these cases seriously, and to prioritize the safety and well-being of victims. There has also been a growing recognition of the need to address the underlying factors that can contribute to domestic violence, such as poverty, addiction, and mental illness. Programs and initiatives have been established to help address these issues and to provide support and resources for those who may be at risk of becoming victims or perpetrators of domestic violence. While the murder of John's wife will always be a tragedy, the legacy of her life and the efforts of those who have sought to honor her memory continue to inspire positive change in the world. Through their actions and advocacy, they are helping to create a world where domestic violence is not tolerated, and where everyone has the support and resources they need to lead safe, happy, and fulfilling lives. Despite the progress that has been made in the wake of the case, domestic violence remains a pervasive problem in many communities. Each year, thousands of people around the world continue to be victims of domestic violence, and many more suffer in silence, afraid to speak out or seek help. But the legacy of the case has shown that change is possible. By working together, communities can create a world where domestic violence is not tolerated, and where all people have the right to live free from fear and abuse. For the families of the victims, the case will always be a painful reminder of the loved ones they have lost. But through their grief and their advocacy, they are helping to ensure that their stories are not forgotten, and that their memories continue to inspire positive change in the world. In the end, the murder of John's wife was a tragic event that touched the lives of many people. But through the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged, as a community came together to support the victims, raise awareness of domestic violence, and work towards creating a better world. The legacy of the case serves as a reminder of the need to take domestic violence seriously, and to work towards creating a world where everyone is safe and respected. It is up to all of us to continue the work that has been started, and to strive towards a brighter and more just future for all. It was a dark and stormy night in the small town of Ravenwood. The wind was howling and the rain was pouring down in sheets. The only source of light was the occasional bolt of lightning that illuminated the sky. A group of teenagers, bored with their mundane lives, decided to break into the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. The mansion was said to be haunted, with a dark history that no one wanted to talk about. As they entered the mansion, they were met with an eerie silence. The creaking of the old wooden floors echoed throughout the empty halls. The air was thick with a musty smell that made it hard to breathe. As they explored the mansion, they discovered strange symbols etched into the walls and floors. The symbols seemed to glow in the dim light, almost as if they were alive. Suddenly, they heard a faint whispering sound coming from the basement. They cautiously made their way down the creaky staircase, the darkness enveloping them. As they reached the bottom of the staircase, they saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was a tall, dark figure with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through their souls. The figure slowly started to walk towards them, its footsteps echoing through the basement. The teenagers tried to run, but the doors and windows had all been locked from the outside. They were trapped. The figure slowly closed in on them, its eyes fixated on their trembling bodies. As it reached out to touch them, they heard a loud clap of thunder. The room was suddenly illuminated by a bright light, and the figure disappeared into thin air. The teenagers quickly ran out of the mansion, never to return again. But the memory of the haunted mansion and the dark figure that lurked within haunted them for the rest of their lives. They would never forget the horror they experienced that fateful night in Ravenwood. Despite their efforts to forget, the teenagers couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. They started to experience strange occurrences in their own homes, like objects moving on their own and unexplained noises in the middle of the night. One by one, the teenagers started to disappear without a trace. The townspeople grew restless and rumors began to spread that the mansion was cursed. The police investigated, but they couldn't find any evidence to support the claims. Years passed, and the mansion remained abandoned. The town had all but forgotten about the cursed mansion and the teenagers who disappeared. But one day, a group of teenagers decided to explore the mansion once again. As they entered the mansion, they were met with the same eerie silence and musty smell that the previous teenagers had encountered. They saw the same strange symbols etched into the walls and floors. But as they made their way down to the basement, they saw something that no one had seen before. In the center of the basement, there was a strange altar with a book lying on top. The book was bound in human skin, and the symbols on the cover seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The teenagers picked up the book and started to flip through the pages. As they read the ancient text, they unknowingly unleashed a powerful force that had been trapped inside the mansion for centuries. The ground started to shake, and the walls started to crumble. The teenagers tried to run, but it was too late. They were swallowed up by the darkness, never to be seen again. The mansion collapsed, and the townspeople finally knew the truth about the cursed mansion. They realized that the dark figure that had haunted the teenagers all those years ago was just a vessel for a much darker force. A force that had been unleashed by the curious teenagers who had dared to enter the mansion once again. From that day on, the town of Ravenwood was never the same again. As the town of Ravenwood tried to move on from the tragedy, strange occurrences started to happen. People reported seeing ghostly apparitions and hearing eerie whispers in the night. The once peaceful town was now shrouded in darkness and fear. One day, a stranger arrived in Ravenwood. He was a mysterious figure, dressed in a black coat and a hat that obscured his face. He walked into town with a sense of purpose, as if he knew exactly what was happening. The townspeople were wary of the stranger, but they had no choice but to ask for his help. They told him about the cursed mansion and the mysterious force that had been unleashed by the curious teenagers. The stranger listened intently, and then revealed himself to be a powerful sorcerer. He knew exactly what had been unleashed, and he had the power to stop it. The sorcerer led the townspeople to the ruins of the cursed mansion. He chanted ancient incantations and drew symbols in the air with his staff. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind blew through the ruins, and the darkness was lifted. The sorcerer had sealed the dark force back into the ancient book, and it was now trapped once again. The ghostly apparitions and eerie whispers faded away, and the town of Ravenwood was finally at peace. But the sorcerer knew that the curse was not fully lifted. He warned the townspeople to never disturb the ruins of the cursed mansion again, lest the dark force be unleashed once more. Years passed, and the town of Ravenwood became a prosperous and peaceful place once again. But the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within remained in the minds of the townspeople. They knew that they had been saved by a powerful sorcerer, and that they must always be cautious when dealing with the supernatural. Despite the sorcerer's warning, some of the townspeople remained curious about the cursed mansion. They would sneak into the ruins at night, hoping to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within. But the sorcerer's warnings were not without merit. The dark force that had been unleashed once before had not been fully contained, and it had been slowly growing in power ever since. One night, as a group of teenagers were exploring the ruins, they heard a faint whispering sound coming from the darkness. They felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over them as they realized that the dark force had been unleashed once again. The dark force was more powerful than ever, and it started to spread throughout the town. The ghostly apparitions and eerie whispers returned, and the townspeople were once again plunged into darkness and fear. The sorcerer returned to Ravenwood, knowing that he was the only one who could stop the dark force. He knew that he had to find a way to fully contain the dark force before it consumed the entire town. The sorcerer searched the ruins of the cursed mansion, trying to find any clues that could help him contain the dark force. Finally, he found an ancient scroll that contained the key to containing the dark force once and for all. The sorcerer used his powers to perform a powerful ritual that would seal the dark force back into the ancient book, but this time, he knew that he had to ensure that it would never be unleashed again. He placed the ancient book in a powerful magical barrier that would prevent anyone from ever uncovering it again. The townspeople watched in awe as the sorcerer completed the ritual, and they knew that they could finally rest easy, knowing that the dark force had been contained. The sorcerer left Ravenwood, knowing that his work was done. The town slowly returned to normal, and the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within slowly faded away. But the sorcerer's warning remained. The people of Ravenwood knew that they must never disturb the ruins of the cursed mansion again, lest they unleash a force that they could never hope to contain. Years passed, and the town of Ravenwood prospered once again. The people were happy, and the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within had become a distant memory. But the sorcerer's warning remained in the back of their minds. They knew that the cursed mansion was still there, and that the dark force could still be unleashed if they were not careful. One day, a group of adventurous teenagers stumbled upon the ruins of the cursed mansion. They had heard stories of the dark force that had been contained within and were eager to explore the ruins for themselves. As they entered the ruins, they heard a faint whispering sound coming from the darkness. They felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over them as they realized that the dark force had been unleashed once again. The teenagers knew that they had to act fast. They had to find a way to contain the dark force before it consumed the entire town. One of the teenagers remembered the ancient scroll that the sorcerer had used to contain the dark force the last time it was unleashed. He knew that they had to find it, and fast. The group of teenagers searched the ruins of the cursed mansion, looking for any clue that could lead them to the ancient scroll. Finally, they found an old book hidden within the ruins. As they opened the book, a powerful gust of wind blew through the ruins, and the darkness was lifted. The teenagers had contained the dark force once again. The townspeople watched in awe as the teenagers completed the ritual to contain the dark force, and they knew that they could finally rest easy, knowing that the dark force had been contained once again. But the teenagers knew that they had to be careful. They knew that the dark force could be unleashed again, and that they had to ensure that it remained contained. They placed the ancient book in a powerful magical barrier, just as the sorcerer had done before. The teenagers left the ruins of the cursed mansion, knowing that they had saved the town of Ravenwood from a terrible fate. The town slowly returned to normal, and the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within slowly faded away once again. But the teenagers knew that they had saved the town from a terrible fate, and that they must always be vigilant, lest the dark force be unleashed once again. As time passed, the teenagers who had saved the town of Ravenwood grew up and moved away. The memory of their heroic deeds faded away, and the cursed mansion was forgotten once again. But the ancient book containing the dark force was not forgotten. It remained locked away in its magical barrier, waiting for someone to unleash it once again. Years went by, and the town of Ravenwood prospered. The people were happy, and the memory of the cursed mansion was nothing more than a distant memory. But one day, a new family moved into the town. They were not from Ravenwood, and they knew nothing of the dark force that lay hidden within the ruins of the cursed mansion. As they explored their new home, the family stumbled upon an old book hidden within the ruins of the cursed mansion. They did not know what it was or what it contained, but they felt drawn to it nonetheless. As they opened the book, a powerful gust of wind blew through the ruins, and the darkness was lifted once again. The dark force had been unleashed once again. The family did not know what they had done. They did not know that they had just unleashed a force that could consume the entire town of Ravenwood. But the townspeople knew. They knew that the dark force had been unleashed once again, and that they had to act fast to contain it. The townspeople searched for the ancient scroll that had been used to contain the dark force the last time it had been unleashed, but it was nowhere to be found. They knew that they had to find another way to contain the dark force before it consumed the entire town. The sorcerer who had saved Ravenwood twice before returned to the town once again. He knew that he was the only one who could stop the dark force once and for all. The sorcerer performed a powerful ritual that would seal the dark force back into the ancient book, but this time, he knew that he had to ensure that it would never be unleashed again. He placed the ancient book in a powerful magical barrier that would prevent anyone from ever uncovering it again. The townspeople watched in awe as the sorcerer completed the ritual, and they knew that they could finally rest easy, knowing that the dark force had been contained once again. The family who had unknowingly unleashed the dark force left Ravenwood, never to return. The town slowly returned to normal, and the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within slowly faded away once again. But the sorcerer knew that the ancient book containing the dark force would always be a threat. He knew that he had to remain vigilant, lest someone unleash the dark force once again. And years went by, and the sorcerer remained in Ravenwood, keeping watch over the town and the ancient book containing the dark force. The memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within slowly faded away, and the town prospered. The sorcerer grew old, but his watchful eye never wavered. He knew that the ancient book containing the dark force was a powerful and dangerous artifact, and he had to ensure that it remained locked away forever. Eventually, the sorcerer passed away, but he had passed on his knowledge and duty to his apprentice, who continued to keep watch over Ravenwood and the ancient book containing the dark force. And so, Ravenwood remained safe and prosperous, with the memory of the cursed mansion and the dark force that lurked within fading further and further away with each passing year. But the ancient book containing the dark force remained locked away, a powerful and dangerous artifact that must always be kept hidden and contained, lest it be unleashed once again. It was a warm summer night, and a group of teenagers decided to explore the abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of town. The park had been closed for years, but the attractions were still standing, rusted and decrepit. As they entered the park, they were met with an unsettling silence. The rides creaked and groaned in the breeze, and the once bright lights flickered dimly. As they explored the park, they began to feel like they were being watched. They could hear whispers in the wind and see shadows moving in the corners of their eyes. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. It was a clown, with an eerie smile and a twisted laugh. The teenagers tried to run, but they found themselves trapped in the park. The clown seemed to be everywhere, lurking in the shadows and stalking them relentlessly. As the night wore on, the teenagers realized that they were not alone in the park. The clowns had taken over, and they were the only ones left. They tried to fight back, but it was too late. The clowns had already taken control, and they were not going to let anyone leave the park alive. The teenagers were trapped, at the mercy of the twisted clowns in the abandoned amusement park. The teenagers tried to find a way out, but the clowns seemed to be one step ahead of them. They were always waiting in the shadows, ready to strike at any moment. As the night went on, the teenagers began to lose hope. They were exhausted, scared, and trapped. They knew that they were no match for the clowns, and they were running out of options. Just when it seemed like all was lost, they stumbled upon a hidden room in the depths of the park. It was dark and cramped, but it seemed to be their only chance. They barricaded themselves inside and waited, their hearts pounding with fear. They could hear the clowns outside, searching for them, but they remained hidden in the darkness. Hours passed, and the clowns finally gave up their search. The teenagers emerged from the room, shaken but alive. As they made their way out of the park, they could still hear the faint sounds of laughter and whispers in the wind. They knew that the clowns were still out there, waiting for their next victims. From that night on, the teenagers never spoke of the abandoned amusement park again. They knew that they had narrowly escaped with their lives, and they would never forget the horror of the clowns that had taken over the park. Despite their best efforts to forget about the abandoned amusement park, the teenagers could not shake the memory of the clowns that had haunted them that fateful night. They found themselves plagued by nightmares, unable to sleep or concentrate on anything else. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the teenagers began to notice that something was not right. They felt like they were being followed, like the clowns were still watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One by one, the teenagers began to disappear. They would vanish without a trace, leaving behind no clues or evidence. The police were baffled, and the townspeople began to whisper about the curse of the abandoned amusement park. The last remaining teenager, a girl named Emily, knew that she was next. She could feel the presence of the clowns everywhere she went, their laughter echoing in her ears. Desperate for answers, Emily returned to the abandoned amusement park, hoping to find a clue that would lead her to the truth. As she searched through the empty rides and attractions, she stumbled upon a hidden underground chamber. Inside, she found a series of twisted and terrifying clown masks, each one more grotesque than the last. And at the center of the room, she found the source of the curse, a portal to another dimension, filled with the evil spirits of the clowns that had once inhabited the park. With a newfound sense of determination, Emily destroyed the portal, sealing away the evil spirits and breaking the curse. The missing teenagers were never found, but Emily knew that they were at peace, their spirits finally released from the clutches of the clowns. As for Emily, she returned to her normal life, forever changed by the horror she had witnessed. She knew that she would never forget the abandoned amusement park, or the twisted clowns that had haunted her nightmares for so long. But as time passed, Emily began to notice strange things happening around her. She would see glimpses of clown masks out of the corner of her eye, and hear whispers in the wind that she couldn't explain. The nightmares returned, more vivid and terrifying than ever before. She knew that the curse of the abandoned amusement park had not truly been broken, and that the clowns were still after her. Determined to put an end to the curse once and for all, Emily returned to the park once again. She knew that she had to find a way to permanently banish the evil spirits that haunted her. As she searched through the park, she found a small, forgotten shrine hidden deep in the woods. It was covered in strange symbols and markings, and seemed to radiate an otherworldly energy. With nothing left to lose, Emily approached the shrine, chanting the words that she had memorized from an old book of spells. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and a bright light filled the air. When Emily opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in the center of the abandoned amusement park. But something was different. The rides were no longer rusted and decayed, and the lights shone brightly once again. The curse had been broken, and the park had been restored to its former glory. Emily knew that she had succeeded, and that the clowns were no longer a threat to anyone. As she walked out of the park, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. The nightmares were gone, and the curse had been lifted. The abandoned amusement park was no longer haunted, and Emily knew that she had finally put an end to the horror that had plagued the town for so long. Days turned into weeks, and Emily began to settle back into her normal life. She no longer heard whispers in the wind, and the clown masks no longer appeared before her eyes. It was as if the curse had never existed. But as time went on, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She began to feel like she was being watched, like there was something lurking in the shadows just out of sight. One night, as she was walking home from a friend's house, Emily heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned around, but there was no one there. Suddenly, she felt a cold hand grab her shoulder, and she turned to see a familiar face, one of the clowns from the abandoned amusement park. Emily tried to run, but the clown was too fast. It chased her through the streets, laughing and cackling all the while. Emily knew that she was trapped, and that there was no way out. Just when she thought it was all over, Emily stumbled upon a hidden alleyway. She dove inside, hoping to find some way to escape. As she looked around, she realized that she had stumbled upon another portal, one that led to another dimension, even darker and more twisted than the one she had seen before. Emily knew that she had to act fast. She grabbed a nearby rock and smashed the portal, destroying it once and for all. The clown disappeared into thin air, and Emily was left standing alone in the alleyway. She knew that the curse had finally been lifted, and that the clowns were no longer a threat to anyone. But as she walked away, Emily couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the end of the horror that had plagued her for so long, or was there something even darker lurking just around the corner? Months passed, and Emily tried her best to move on from the horror that had consumed her life. She no longer heard whispers in the wind, and the clown masks no longer appeared before her eyes. She even began to enjoy going to amusement parks again, something that she had not done since that fateful night at the abandoned park. But one day, as she was riding a roller coaster, Emily felt a sudden jolt. The ride screeched to a halt, and Emily was left hanging upside down, suspended in mid-air. As she looked around, she realized that something was wrong. The people around her were no longer normal amusement park goers, they were clowns, each one more twisted and terrifying than the last. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was trapped, suspended in mid-air with no escape in sight. Suddenly, the clowns began to converge on her. They laughed and cackled, their faces twisted into grotesque expressions of joy. Emily knew that she was doomed. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Emily heard a voice, a familiar voice. "Emily, can you hear me?" It was her best friend, calling out to her through a walkie-talkie. Emily realized that she had been trapped inside a virtual reality simulation, created by a group of pranksters who wanted to scare her. As the simulation ended, Emily was left shaken and terrified. She knew that the horror she had experienced was not real, but it had felt all too real. But as she walked away from the ride, Emily couldn't help but wonder, what other horrors were waiting for her just around the corner, and would she be able to tell what was real and what was not? As Emily walked away from the ride, she couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was watching her. She turned around, but there was no one there. She tried to push the thought out of her head, telling herself that it was just the after effects of the simulation, but deep down she knew that something was not right. The feeling persisted, even as Emily left the amusement park and returned home. She tried to distract herself with work and other activities, but she couldn't shake off the sense of dread that had settled over her. As the days passed, strange things began to happen around Emily once again. She would see glimpses of the clown masks out of the corner of her eye, and hear whispers in the wind that she couldn't explain. Emily knew that this couldn't be a coincidence. The horrors from the virtual reality simulation had somehow followed her into the real world. Desperate for a solution, Emily turned to the only person who might be able to help, the eccentric old woman who had helped her break the curse of the abandoned amusement park. The old woman listened intently as Emily explained what had been happening to her. She nodded knowingly, as if she had expected this to happen. "You see, my dear, once you've been touched by the otherworldly, there's no going back. The horrors will follow you wherever you go, until you find a way to banish them for good. The old woman then gave Emily a small, intricately carved box. Inside this box, you'll find everything you need to banish the horrors that haunt you. But beware, the price of banishment may be higher than you expect. Emily took the box and thanked the old woman, unsure of what to expect. She opened the box to find an array of strange objects, a vial of blood, a lock of hair, and a small, ancient-looking dagger. Emily knew that she had to do what needed to be done. She followed the instructions that the old woman had given her, and chanted the ancient words that she had memorized. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and a bright light filled the air. When Emily opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in the center of a dark and twisted dimension. The clowns appeared before her, more twisted and grotesque than ever before. But this time, Emily was ready. She raised the ancient dagger and plunged it into the heart of the lead clown. With a scream, the clown disappeared into thin air, and the rest of the clowns followed suit. As Emily returned to the real world, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The horrors were gone, and she knew that she had banished them for good. But as she walked away, Emily couldn't help but wonder, what other horrors lay waiting for her in the shadows, and would she be ready to face them when they came? Emily went on to live her life, always with one eye looking over her shoulder, but the horrors never returned. She knew that she had faced her fears and banished the darkness that had once consumed her, but she also knew that the world was a vast and mysterious place, full of secrets and unknown dangers. But Emily was no longer afraid. She had proven to herself that she was strong enough to face the unknown, and that she could overcome any obstacle that stood in her way. And so, Emily continued on her journey, ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead, knowing that she had the strength and courage to face them head on. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Alex and a girl named Emma who decided to go camping in the wilderness of Saskatchewan, Canada. They had heard stories of strange occurrences in the area but dismissed them as mere urban legends. They arrived at their campsite and set up their tent, excited for a weekend of adventure in the great outdoors. As the night fell, they lit a fire and sat around it, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. However, as they settled into their sleeping bags for the night, they began to hear strange noises outside their tent. At first, they dismissed it as the wind, but the noises became louder and more persistent. Suddenly, they heard what sounded like footsteps circling their tent. Alex unzipped the tent to investigate but found nothing. Emma tried to reassure him that it was just their imagination and they should go back to sleep. As they were about to drift off, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. They sat up, startled, and realized that the scream was getting closer and closer. They quickly packed up their things and tried to leave, but they found that they were hopelessly lost in the dense forest. They stumbled through the woods, the scream still echoing around them. As they ran, they noticed that the trees around them seemed to be closing in, blocking their way. They began to panic, realizing that they were trapped in a living nightmare. Suddenly, they saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a tall, gaunt man with pale skin and dark, sunken eyes. He let out a haunting cackle and lunged towards them. Alex and Emma screamed and ran as fast as they could, their hearts pounding in their chests. They finally stumbled upon a clearing and collapsed, gasping for breath. As they looked around, they saw that they were in a graveyard. The graves were all old and weathered, and the tombstones were covered in moss and vines. They realized that they had stumbled upon an ancient burial ground and that the creature chasing them was a vengeful spirit that had been disturbed by their presence. Alex and Emma knew that they had to find a way out of the graveyard and back to civilization before the spirit caught up to them. They took a deep breath and set off, praying that they would make it out alive. They ran for what seemed like hours until they finally saw the lights of a small town in the distance. They collapsed in relief, knowing that they had made it out alive. As they looked back towards the woods, they saw the silhouette of the creature watching them from the shadows, its pale eyes glowing in the dark. Alex and Emma knew that they would never forget their horrifying experience in the woods of Saskatchewan, and that they would always be wary of the things that lurked in the shadows. However, as Alex and Emma were catching their breath, they realized that something was off about the small town they had stumbled upon. The houses were old and dilapidated, and the streets were eerily empty. As they walked through the deserted town, they began to hear whispers in the wind, telling them to leave and never come back. They ignored the warnings, thinking that it was just their frazzled nerves playing tricks on them. But as they turned a corner, they saw something that made their blood run cold. In the center of the town square, there was a statue of the same gaunt, pale figure that had chased them through the woods. Alex and Emma froze in terror, realizing that they had not escaped the vengeful spirit after all. The creature had followed them into the town, and they were trapped once again. They turned to run, But the streets had changed. The buildings seemed to be closing in on them, and the statue of the creature was always just around the corner, watching them with its glowing, pale eyes. As they ran in circles, they realized that they were trapped in an endless maze of terror. They had unknowingly stumbled upon a cursed town, and the spirit that had pursued them through the woods was now their eternal tormentor. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Alex and Emma were lost in the cursed town, doomed to wander its twisted streets forever. They never slept, never ate, and never rested. They were trapped in a nightmare that would never end. Their screams echoed through the deserted streets, but no one could hear them. They were lost in a world of darkness, their souls trapped in an eternal cycle of terror. And so, Alex and Emma became a part of the town's legend, a cautionary tale for anyone who dared to venture into the cursed wilderness of Saskatchewan. They were doomed to spend eternity in the twisted town, their fate forever entwined with the vengeful spirit that had pursued them through the woods. Years went by, and the cursed town became shrouded in mystery and fear. No one dared to venture into the wilderness of Saskatchewan anymore, for fear of becoming trapped in the cursed town like Alex and Emma. But one day, a group of daring explorers decided to brave the dangers of the wilderness and search for the lost town. They had heard the legends and believed that they could find the cursed town and unravel its secrets. As they made their way through the dense forest, they began to hear whispers in the wind, warning them to turn back. But they were determined to find the lost town and uncover its mysteries. Finally, they stumbled upon the cursed town, and they were immediately overcome by a sense of dread. The streets were deserted, and the buildings were crumbling and decrepit. As they wandered through the twisted maze of streets, they heard the screams of Alex and Emma echoing through the darkness. They knew that they were not alone in the cursed town, and they feared for their lives. But then, something strange happened. As they explored the town, they began to see glimpses of a different reality, one where the town was thriving and full of life. They saw people laughing and talking, children playing in the streets, and music filling the air. They realized that the cursed town was not cursed at all, but that it was trapped in a cycle of fear and terror. The vengeful spirit that had pursued Alex and Emma had created a nightmare world, where the town was trapped in eternal darkness. With this realization, the explorers set out to break the curse and free the town from its nightmare. They performed a ritual that banished the vengeful spirit back into the woods, freeing the town from its curse. As the darkness lifted, the town began to flourish once again, and the people who had been lost in its nightmare were finally able to find peace. Alex and Emma were no longer trapped in their eternal torment, and they were finally able to rest. And so, the cursed town of Saskatchewan became known not as a place of fear and horror, but as a place of redemption and hope. The explorers who had braved its dangers were celebrated as heroes, for they had freed the town from its eternal nightmare and brought light back to the darkness. The news of the cursed town's liberation spread far and wide, and people began to return to the wilderness of Saskatchewan with renewed curiosity and interest. They were fascinated by the town's history and the legend of the curse that had held it captive for so long. As the town began to thrive once again, the people who had been lost in its nightmare were not forgotten. Alex and Emma's story was retold again and again, a reminder of the dangers of venturing into the unknown and the importance of overcoming fear. In honor of their sacrifice, a statue was erected in the town square, depicting Alex and Emma as they had been in life, before they became trapped in the cursed town. It was a symbol of their courage and the hope that had finally freed the town from its eternal nightmare. As people visited the town and learned its history, they realized that the curse had not been a punishment, but a warning. It was a reminder that the wilderness of Saskatchewan was not to be taken lightly, and that there were dangers lurking in the darkness. And so, the cursed town of Saskatchewan became a beacon of hope, a reminder of the power of courage and the importance of overcoming fear. It was a place where legends were born, where mysteries were solved, and where the darkness was finally lifted. Despite the newfound peace and prosperity in the cursed town of Saskatchewan, there was still a sense of unease among some of the locals. They felt that the curse had not been fully lifted, and that there was still a presence lurking in the shadows. One day, a group of teenagers stumbled upon an old journal in the ruins of one of the town's abandoned buildings. The journal belonged to a young woman who had lived in the town before the curse took hold, and it told a chilling story. The woman had been a witness to a gruesome ritual that had taken place in the woods outside of the town. A group of people, led by a charismatic and powerful figure, had performed a dark ceremony that had summoned a vengeful spirit from the depths of the earth. According to the journal, the curse on the town had not been the result of a random encounter with a vengeful spirit, but rather a deliberate act of dark magic. The teenagers were shocked by what they had read, and they knew that they had to investigate further. They delved deeper into the town's history, and what they uncovered was even more shocking. They discovered that the same group of people who had performed the dark ritual were still living in the town, and that they had been secretly practicing dark magic for years. The teenagers realized that the curse had not been fully lifted, and that the town was still in danger. They knew that they had to act quickly to stop the group before they could perform another dark ritual and unleash a new curse upon the town. With bravery and determination, the teenagers confronted the group and put an end to their dark practices. They destroyed the artifacts that had been used in the ritual, and banished the group from the town. As the darkness lifted once again, the people of the cursed town of Saskatchewan were finally able to find true peace. They knew that they had overcome not just one, but two curses, and that their town was finally free from the darkness that had plagued it for so long. And so, the town became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a way to find the light. The teenagers who had saved the town became heroes, and their story was told for generations to come as a testament to the power of courage and determination. Despite the banishment of the group of dark practitioners, the people of Saskatchewan began to report strange sightings in the woods surrounding the town. Some claimed to have seen a monstrous creature lurking in the shadows, while others reported hearing unearthly screams echoing through the trees at night. As fear and paranoia swept through the town, the teenagers who had saved the town from the dark practitioners knew that they had to investigate. They gathered their courage and ventured into the woods, determined to uncover the source of the strange sightings. As they made their way deeper into the woods, they could feel a sense of foreboding creeping over them. The darkness was palpable, and the woods were silent except for the sound of their footsteps on the forest floor. Suddenly, they heard a low growling sound, and they froze in fear. The growling grew louder, and they could feel their hearts pounding in their chests. Out of the darkness emerged a massive, terrifying creature. It was covered in matted fur, with razor-sharp claws and glowing red eyes that seemed to bore into their souls. The teenagers knew that they were facing a monster unlike anything they had ever seen before. They stood frozen in terror, unable to move as the creature began to move towards them. Just as the creature was about to pounce, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was an old man, who carried a staff made of twisted wood. With a wave of his staff, the old man conjured a bright light that filled the forest, and the creature let out a piercing scream before disappearing back into the darkness. The old man explained that he was a shaman, and that the creature they had encountered was a spirit monster that had been summoned by the dark practitioners. He had been watching the teenagers' progress, waiting for them to confront the creature and put an end to its reign of terror. With the monster vanquished, the people of Saskatchewan could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They knew that their town was still surrounded by darkness, but they also knew that they had a group of brave teenagers and a wise shaman to protect them from the evils that lurked in the woods. And so, the cursed town of Saskatchewan continued to thrive, a place where legends were born and mysteries were solved, but also a place where the darkness was never far away. The people knew that they had to remain vigilant, and that they could always count on the bravery and determination of those who had saved the town from its curse. Despite the banishment of the group of dark practitioners, the people of Saskatchewan began to report strange sightings in the woods surrounding the town. Some claimed to have seen a monstrous creature lurking in the shadows, while others reported hearing unearthly screams echoing through the trees at night. As fear and paranoia swept through the town, the teenagers who had saved the town from the dark practitioners knew that they had to investigate. They gathered their courage and ventured into the woods, determined to uncover the source of the strange sightings. As they made their way deeper into the woods, they could feel a sense of foreboding creeping over them. The darkness was palpable, and the woods were silent except for the sound of their footsteps on the forest floor. Suddenly, they heard a low growling sound, and they froze in fear. The growling grew louder, and they could feel their hearts pounding in their chests. Out of the darkness emerged a massive, terrifying creature. It was covered in matted fur, with razor-sharp claws and glowing red eyes that seemed to bore into their souls. The teenagers knew that they were facing a monster unlike anything they had ever seen before. They stood frozen in terror, unable to move as the creature began to move towards them. Just as the creature was about to pounce, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was an old man, who carried a staff made of twisted wood. With a wave of his staff, the old man conjured a bright light that filled the forest, and the creature let out a piercing scream before disappearing back into the darkness. The old man explained that he was a shaman, and that the creature they had encountered was a spirit monster that had been summoned by the dark practitioners. He had been watching the teenagers' progress, waiting for them to confront the creature and put an end to its reign of terror. With the monster vanquished, the people of Saskatchewan could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They knew that their town was still surrounded by darkness, but they also knew that they had a group of brave teenagers and a wise shaman to protect them from the evils that lurked in the woods. And so, the cursed town of Saskatchewan continued to thrive, a place where legends were born and mysteries were solved, but also a place where the darkness was never far away. The people knew that they had to remain vigilant, and that they could always count on the bravery and determination of those who had saved the town from its curse. Why have I been calling Saskatchewan a town this whole time? I guess we'll never know. Sleep well.